would take the seat of honor and introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit about why you want to be a judge.
Sure. Thank you. I want to be a judge because I love public service and I love working in the court system. I've now been privileged to work as a prosecutor, being in and out of the county and circuit courts on a daily basis, as an appellate attorney, viewing the issues facing the trial courts from kind of a bird's eye view, and as a judicial law clerk, serving some of our best local judges. But in terms of public service, I see serving as a judge as the pinnacle, and there's no higher honor. Part of the reason, of course, that I'm interested in this particular position is because Flagler County is my home. I've lived here for 15 years. In fact, it's a 4-minute drive from my driveway to this courthouse. My kids are in school here, my parents are here, my friends, my network is all here. So it'd be really awesome to be able to do what I love right here in my own community. Also, I love county court. I love the pace. I love the atmosphere of the courtroom, seeing something new and different each day. And I love interacting with people. I feel that I have the right qualifications to be a county court judge because of my diverse experience, both in criminal and civil law at the trial and appellate court levels. Working as a prosecutor made me comfortable in the courtroom. It taught me how to effectively manage a heavy caseload. It taught me how to interact and work with people from all kinds of different backgrounds and life experiences, including, of course, unrepresented litigants. It also gave me experience making difficult and sometimes unpopular decisions. Working as an appellate attorney has really solidified my knowledge of evidentiary issues and procedural rules. In the county courts, whether it's a civil docket or a criminal docket, there's a lot of motion practice that goes on. The judges need to be really sharp on those kinds of issues. In my current role as an assistant attorney general, of course, I've had extensive experience dealing with the kinds of issues that come up in criminal cases. But I've also had a lot of exposure to the kinds of issues that arise in civil cases due to my work as a judicial law clerk in the civil division. In fact, during that time, I even had the opportunity to research and write appellate opinions on civil issues arising out of our county courts. Finally, I feel that I have the right disposition to be a county court judge. I'm outgoing, I'm a people person, I'm patient, and I believe that any attorney that you speak to that has worked with me as opposing counsel would tell you that I'm fair-minded. So between my professional qualifications and my personality, I think that I would make an excellent county court judge.
Can I ask you, it looks like we just got admitted to the Wisconsin bar in February.
I did. Last year, my husband and I, as it turned out briefly, investigated the possibility of moving to Wisconsin. It's specifically because of a private school system that my children belong to, that there's not access to high schools here, and there's a lot of access to that particular system in Wisconsin, and we have friends there. And so just kind of looking down the road, we decided to investigate. Me being someone that always jumps in with 2 feet, said, well, we can't even seriously think about that. If I'm not even admitted to practice there, there's no possibility of applying for a job or that sort of thing. And you don't have to take a bar exam in Wisconsin, so it was really just a matter of paperwork and bringing documents together. So I went ahead and went through the process. By the time I even got sworn in, and I'm on an inactive status, we've completely dropped the idea of moving, but even by the time I got sworn in, it was becoming apparent that Milwaukee, where we were specifically looking, was just not going to be the right fit, in part because we discovered that in Wisconsin, the state employees, well, there's that, yeah, and I was shocked, I mean, when I found that out, that was the deal breaker, really, but also all the state employees are centralized in Madison, and we have friends in Milwaukee, and it was well, I'm a state employee. I love working for the government. It's what I want to do, and it didn't look like that was going to be a possibility. But it also gave us time to really reflect on what do we have here, and that was really the bottom line. We're looking at our community and our friends, and I love my current job, and my parents are here, and our church, and So we just decided it was not the right avenue for us. So like I said, I'm on inactive status in Wisconsin. So whatever happens here, we're staying in Florida.
Tell us about your being a mentor with the Take Stock in Children program.
Yeah, I absolutely loved that, and that's something that I'm hoping to get involved in again, hopefully in the coming school year. My mentee graduated in 2016, and we had a change in my husband's career at that time, and it just became really difficult for me to pick right back up with that. But now my husband's retired recently, so I'd like to pick it up again. But I would meet with my mentee weekly. You have to serve as sort of an advocate and guide, and he did have a couple of bumps in the road, got suspended a couple of times, he got arrested a couple of times, went to diversion, so he really got his money's worth out of me. He did actually ultimately not technically graduate from the program. He got kicked out after the second time he got arrested. But he wanted to continue to meet with me, even though this was several months ahead of his high school graduation. So I said, absolutely. So really the last 6 months or more, I was not technically his Take Stock mentor anymore because he had been removed from the program, but you know, he was my kid. I'd been with him for 4 years, and I wanted to see it through, and he wanted to help. So I stuck with him through graduation, and he did actually go into college. I see his mom from time to time around town and that sort of thing, and he's doing well now. It was a really awesome experience.
In your work with the various levels of the court system, how do you view the role of county judge as not only someone who's deciding cases, but really integral in the community?
I think that it's important because for a lot of people who have very limited exposure to the courts, if it's just a one-time, a person gets arrested for DUI one time, or they have a landlord-tenant dispute or a small business contract dispute, that sort of thing, if they're going to have contact with the court system at all, it's probably going to be the county court. So I feel like you're sort of the face of the community in the circuit court when you're talking about greater amounts of money at stake or felonies. You're more likely to be represented. You're less likely to be represented by an attorney in the county courts. So I think it's really important to have a judge with the right demeanor that's able to deal with particularly unrepresented people at that level. So I think that's one of the big differences. Another role that I see for county court judges that I can certainly say from my own experience is they are training some of our younger lawyers too. I was really blessed to be in front of fantastic county court judges as a young prosecutor. I was in Judge David Beck's courtroom, and then I was in Judge Bell Schumann's courtroom, and they really do play a role in teaching and guiding young public defenders and assistant state attorneys, and that was such a wonderful thing for me that I would love to be able to pass on with my knowledge too.
How'd you do on the bar exam?
You know, it was very frustrating to me that Florida doesn't keep statistics, you know, that you passed in the top 10% or 5% or what have you, because in Ohio, where I took the bar there right out of law school and then moved before the results even came out. But I knew my numbers. In Florida, I know that I did well because, as I mentioned in my application, I was invited to give a speech at the swearing-in ceremony at the 5th District Court of Appeal because I had the highest score of any of the attendees. But otherwise, I wouldn't have known because, again, Florida doesn't. I even called the bar and said, "What do you mean you can't tell me if it's a good score? You know, statistically, I'd like to put that as an application or something." But as it turns out, I did well on the bar exam. Thank you.
Sometimes at county court, you come up against really sympathetic people and hard law. I mean, you have to evict grandmas and single parents who, you know, you're displacing their children from a place of certainty and comfort, but they haven't paid their rent and they haven't put it in the court registry. What do you do when sympathetic facts come up against hard law?
Well, the law has to trump, unfortunately. That's something that all judges encounter. It's something that even prosecutors encounter when you're making filing decisions. Sometimes you've got a pretty sympathetic defendant and a not so sympathetic victim, for example. So, I mean, to the extent that a judge has discretion in whatever the matter might be before them, then obviously that's the kind of factor that you can take into account. But if, as you put it, rent has not been paid, the landlord has gone through the steps that they have to take, and you know the law dictates that the renter has to be evicted, then the renter has to be evicted, and it's not the court's role to intervene on that, in that matter, or to contradict the will of the legislator and that sort of things. We just can't do it. It's hard, but you can't operate that way. That's just not a judge's role.
You want to do your vehicle?
Well, I know you were at the seminar, and they threw out the question about the park and the ordinance that says no vehicles, and the ambulance driver gets cited for driving his ambulance in to save somebody's life. What do you do?
Well,
And why do you do it?
that kind of goes back to the evicted grandma. It's, you know, my first thought in a situation like that is, this is why prosecutors and city attorneys have discretion to pursue or not pursue those kinds of things. If an ambulance driver drives into a park to save somebody's life, you would like to think that before it gets to court, someone will have exercised some discretion. But assuming that no one else has up to that point, you have to do what the statute says. Again, when sometimes there's discretion for judges and sometimes there's not. And if the only information that you have is a law that says you cannot drive a vehicle into a park, and vehicle is defined in Florida statutes, you have to enforce the law as it's written. Now, sometimes I'm sure we've all seen opinions where courts have written, we've done this reluctantly. Legislator, you may want to look at that. I mean, there's avenues to bring it to lawmakers' attention that there's a problem with the law, or you know, sometimes it's being unfairly applied because of things that were not foreseen at the time that it was written. But again, that's not for the court to do. The most that you can really do in that situation is bring it to their attention.
If appointed, would there be a judge that you would seek out to be sort of a mentor, or someone that you would emulate?
I've been lucky because of my years as a prosecutor and as a judicial staff attorney that I've had exposure to a ton of great judges in the 7th Judicial Circuit, and I think there's something that I could take from quite a few of them. I referenced Judge Beck. His humility and patience was unequaled. Everyone that came in front of him felt like they got their day in court. At the same time, he kept the docket moving efficiently. He just had this great personality and ability to work with people that way. Judge Schumann taught me the value of being prepared. She was always so well prepared for every motion to suppress hearing and motion to dismiss, and whatever was going on, she was on it, and she had the benefit of all her years at the Attorney General's office too, so she was really sharp with the search and seizure issues and that sort of thing. Judge Perkins, who I worked for as a law clerk, is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, but also the most thorough and prepared. And especially on the civil docket, which is when I was working for him, he always knew the answer instinctively because he had such a huge background in civil litigation. But that doesn't mean that he would just fire it off. He would himself or have me go back and look, pull some cases, let's think this through, let's make sure that we're doing it right and that we're coming to the right conclusion for the right reasons. So he's a great example of thoroughness. But as far as how to operate as a new judge, I would point to Judge Leah Case, who's not a new judge now, of course, but I started as a law clerk in 2011, and she was appointed in 2010. So when I became a law clerk, she was in the dependency division and had no background in dependency whatsoever. So she utilized me a lot, but I can hear her in my head saying, I don't know, but I'm still trying to learn this, but I'm not sure what the answer is, but, And I'm trying to learn for her was I'm actually trying to learn. I'm not fumbling around, waiting to get overturned, trying by trial and error, being pushed around by the attorneys in the courtroom one way or the other. She was doing the research, she was having me do the research and write memorandums for her. We were talking it through, she was talking to other judges. She had that self-awareness to know what she didn't know and to not settle for that, to actually find the answer. So she was just a fabulous example in that regard as how to operate as a new judge and become familiar, especially in an area where you didn't have any previous experience.
Any other questions from the commission? Any last words you want to leave us with?
I really appreciate your time, and like I said at the beginning, I think that I would be a really great fit in this job, and I thank you for your consideration of my application. Thank you.